All right, welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going to be tackling a figure whose name is pretty much synonymous with political strategy, Niccolo Machiavelli. But before you think this is just another history lesson, let me tell you, for anyone even thinking about the UPSC exam, especially if you've got international relations as your optional, well, Machiavelli, he's not just history, he's practically required reading.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. And it's not just about the prince either. There's this whole world of Machiavellian thought that's surprisingly relevant, I think, to understanding how complex international relations are today.
Exactly. And that's what we're here to kind of unpack today. So we're going to delve into Machiavelli's life, his major works, and most importantly, how all his ideas can help you, the listener, analyze global politics and maybe even ace those tricky UPSC questions.
I think what often trips people up is they try to understand Machiavelli without really understanding his world. Like to really get him, you need to kind of step back in time to Renaissance Italy.
Okay, time travel engaged. So paint us a picture. Renaissance Italy, what was going on?
Well, imagine like a world of city-states, right? Each one vying for power, constantly shifting alliances, and always under threat from these larger, way more powerful neighbors. It was a time of huge cultural and intellectual change, yeah, but also like brutal political realities. You know what I mean? This wasn't some theoretical debate about like ideal governance or something. This was about survival.
Wow, yeah, that definitely sets a different tone. So it's less about moral philosophy and more about like gritty real world politics then.
Yeah.
So where does Machiavelli fit into all of this? Who was this guy?
Well, Machiavelli was right in the thick of it. He wasn't just some like armchair philosopher. He was a diplomat, a historian, and he even had a stint as a playwright. And he served in the Florentine Republic too, so that gave him like firsthand experience of all the political maneuvering and power struggles of the day.
So he was like a practitioner, not just a theorist. That actually makes his writing so much more interesting because it's coming from someone who actually lived and breathed this world.
Exactly, and that experience it shines through in his work, especially in The Prince, which, let's be honest, is often seen as kind of a controversial handbook for
Right.
rulers.
So it's like the original How to Win Friends and Influence People, but
Yeah.
but for aspiring princes, not CEOs.
Yeah.
But you mentioned there's more to Machiavelli than just the prince. What else should our aspiring diplomats and policymakers be reading?
Oh, yeah. Don't get me wrong. The Prince is important, but it's only one piece of the puzzle. For a well-rounded understanding of Machiavelli and for those UPSC essays, trust me, you really need to delve into his other works. Like the Discourses on Livy, it offers a completely different perspective, exploring like Republican ideals and the importance of civic virtue. And the history of Florence, that one, provides some incredible insights into his analysis of political conflict and the dynamics of power.
So it's like getting like different angles on the same subject, right?
Right.
One book might focus on like the individual leader, another on the structure of the state itself, and then another on all the historical forces at play.
Exactly. And it's by understanding these different perspectives that you can start to grasp like the true depth of Machiavelli's thought.
Okay, so we have a sense of the man and his times.
Hmm.
Now let's get to the meat of it, Machiavelli's big ideas. What are the concepts that really stand out, especially for someone trying to make sense of international relations and maybe even answer a UPSC question or two?
Well, there are a few core themes to keep in mind. First and foremost, there's realpolitik, which is all about focusing on like practical realities, not idealistic notions of how things should be. In international relations, what that means is understanding that states will like act in their own self-interest, even if it means bending the rules or forming alliances that might seem counterintuitive at first glance.
So it's less about judging actions as like good or bad and more about understanding the motivations and the strategic calculations behind them.
Precisely. And this leads us to another key concept. Virtue. Now, this isn't about traditional morality. Machiavelli's virtue is about the skills, the cunning, the adaptability, and sometimes, yes, even the ruthlessness that a leader needs to navigate this complex and often dangerous world.
It's about being able to make those tough calls, seize opportunities, and even like bend the rules when necessary, right?
Right.
It's about survival and success in a world where everyone is playing the game.
Exactly. And let's not forget the role of fortune, what we might call luck or circumstance. Machiavelli acknowledged that even the most skilled leader can't control everything, but virtue can help you weather those storms and even turn unexpected events to your advantage.
So it's like a combination of skill and luck, but you need that virtue to make the most of whatever fortune throws your way.
And what about his ideas on republicanism? Didn't he also believe in the importance of like civic virtue and a strong republic?
You're absolutely right. It's important to remember that Machiavelli wasn't like solely focused on power-hungry princes. He also deeply believed in the importance of active citizenship and a strong, well-functioning republic as a way to resist tyranny and promote the common good.
So it's not just about individual leaders and their strategies, but also about the structures of government and the role of the people. It sounds like there's a lot to unpack here.
There definitely is, and that's what makes studying Machiavelli so fascinating and relevant, especially for anyone interested in international relations. His ideas offer like a framework for understanding the motivations of states, the dynamics of power, and the strategies that leaders use to achieve their goals. All right, I'm definitely starting to see why Machiavelli is considered a must-read for anyone serious about international relations.
Yay.
But I have to ask, this was all happening centuries ago, right? Why should a modern-day UPSC aspirant care about these ideas? Are they really relevant to the world we live in today?
That's a great question, and one that we'll delve into even further after a quick break. When we come back, we'll explore how Machiavelli's concepts can be applied to contemporary issues and help you gain a deeper understanding of global politics. And trust me, this is not just for the UPSC exam. This is for anyone who wants to make sense of the world around them. Stay tuned.
Okay, we're back and ready to tackle the big question. How do Machiavelli's ideas, all this stuff from centuries ago, how do they help us understand the world we live in today? And especially for you UPSC aspirants out there, how could you use this to really gain an edge in understanding international relations?
Yeah, that's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And the answer is, well, surprisingly, these ideas they're incredibly relevant. In fact, you could even argue they're more important now than ever. Like let's take realpolitik, for instance. Think about the current geopolitical landscape, right? Nations are constantly making decisions based on their own interests, often forming alliances that might have seemed unthinkable just a few years ago.
It's true, yeah. It's a complex web of these shifting partnerships, and sometimes it feels like the old rules just don't apply anymore.
Yeah.
So how does a Machiavellian lens help us make sense of it all?
Well, imagine you're analyzing a contemporary conflict,
Yeah.
Like let's say a territorial dispute or a trade war. A Machiavellian approach would encourage you to look beyond the public statements and the diplomatic niceties. It's about asking, what are the real motivations at play here? What are the strategic goals that each nation is pursuing? And how are they using their power, both hard and soft, to achieve those goals?
Hmm. That's a really interesting way to look at it. It's like peeling back the layers to see those underlying power dynamics and the strategic calculations that are driving these events. It's not about right or wrong. It's about understanding the game, like you said.
Exactly. And that's where virtue comes in. Think about leaders who have successfully navigated these complex geopolitical situations. They often exhibit those Machiavellian qualities: adaptability, strategic thinking, the ability to seize opportunities, and sometimes, yes, even a willingness to make those tough, potentially unpopular decisions.
So it's not about being nice or playing by the rules all the time. It's about being effective, achieving your objectives, and ultimately, ensuring the survival and success of the state.
Right. And remember, Machiavelli wasn't like advocating for ruthlessness for its own sake. He was simply acknowledging that in a world where power is constantly in flux, leaders, they need to be prepared to do what's necessary to protect their interests and advance their agendas.
This is definitely making me rethink how I analyze international relations. It's a much more pragmatic and dare I say realistic approach than what you usually find in textbooks.
And that's why Machiavelli is so valuable, especially for someone preparing for the UPSC exam. His ideas challenge you to think critically, to look beyond the surface, and to develop a deeper understanding of how the world really works.
Okay, I'm starting to see the practical application here. It's not just about memorizing historical facts. It's about using those concepts to analyze current events and to anticipate future developments.
Exactly. Imagine you're asked to analyze a recent international crisis or a major diplomatic negotiation. By applying Machiavelli's principles, realpolitik, virtue, the role of fortune, you can craft a much richer and more insightful response.
It's like having a secret decoder ring for understanding the motivations and strategies of nations. And for the UPSC, that kind of insight can really set you apart.
Absolutely. Now, no, let's not forget about Machiavelli's ideas on republicanism and civic virtue. While he's often associated with power politics, he also believed in the importance of a strong republic with active and engaged citizens.
So it's not all about like princes and power grabs. There's a place for the people and the institutions that govern them.
Absolutely. In fact, Machiavelli, he saw a well-functioning republic as the best defense against tyranny and the most effective way to achieve long-term stability and prosperity.
But how does that like translate to international relations? It's a world of states, not individual citizens.
That's a great point. But think about it this way. A strong republic with its emphasis on civic virtue and the common good is more likely to act responsibly on the international stage. It's less likely to engage in reckless adventures or to succumb to the whims of a single unchecked leader.
That's a really interesting perspective. It suggests that the internal structure of a state can have a significant impact on its foreign policy.
Precisely, and that's a nuance that's often overlooked in traditional analyses of international relations. But for someone preparing for the UPSC exam, understanding that connection can give you a real advantage.
Yeah, I could definitely see how that would like add depth and sophistication to your analysis. So we've talked about how Machiavelli's ideas can be applied to states and their leaders, but what about like other actors on the global stage? How do his concepts help us understand the behavior of international organizations, non-governmental organizations, or even terrorist groups?
That's where things get even more interesting. While Machiavelli primarily focused on states, his concepts can be adapted to understand the behavior of a wide range of actors. Think about it. Even these non-state actors are engaged in power dynamics. They have their own interests and objectives, and they often use strategic thinking to achieve their goals.
So we could like analyze the strategies of a terrorist organization through a Machiavellian lens, right? Like
Right.
looking at how they use violence, propaganda, and alliances to exert influence and achieve their objectives.
Exactly. Or we could consider how an international organization like the United Nations, navigates the complex web of state interest to promote peace and cooperation. Even in these seemingly different contexts, the underlying principles of power, strategy, and self-interest, they remain relevant.
This is really eye-opening. It's like Machiavelli's ideas. They provide a framework for understanding not just international relations, but the dynamics of power and influence in any context.
You're getting it. And that's the beauty of studying great thinkers like Machiavelli. Their ideas transcend specific time periods and contexts, offering insights into the enduring patterns of human behavior and the challenges of leadership.
This has been an incredible exploration of Machiavelli's ideas and their relevance to the modern world. I feel like I have a whole new toolkit for analyzing international relations. But before we wrap things up, I have one more question that's been nagging at me. Machiavelli is often portrayed as a rather cynical thinker, someone who believed that human nature is inherently selfish and power hungry. Do you think that's a fair assessment?
That's a question that scholars have been debating for centuries. Some argue that Machiavelli was simply a realist, acknowledging the inherent self-interest and ambition that drive human actions. Others see him as more nuanced, recognizing the potential for both good and evil in human nature.
So it's not necessarily about cynicism, but about recognizing the complexities of human motivation and the potential for both cooperation and conflict in the pursuit of power.
Exactly. And remember, Machiavelli wasn't just concerned with individual morality. He also believed in the importance of institutions, laws, and civic virtue to check the potential excesses of power and to channel human ambition towards more constructive ends.
So it's about finding that balance,
Yeah.
harnessing human ambition for the common good while also putting safeguards in place to prevent abuses of power.
Yeah.
It's a delicate dance, but one that's essential for any society, whether it's a small city state or a global superpower.
You put it perfectly. And that's why studying Machiavelli is so relevant today. His ideas, they force us to grapple with these timeless questions about power, leadership, and the very nature of politics. And for anyone aspiring to a career in diplomacy, international relations, or even just to be a more informed and engaged citizen, these are questions that we can't afford to ignore.
Wow, this has been an incredible journey through Machiavelli's world. It's amazing how these ideas from like centuries ago, they can still be so relevant to understanding how complex international relations are today.
Yeah, it is really fascinating how his insights into human nature and power and strategy, they just continue to resonate even in our modern interconnected world.
And for our listeners, the ones who are prepping for the UPSC, especially those with international relations as their optional, I think we've unearthed some serious gold today.
I agree. We went beyond the surface level, exploring not just what Machiavelli said, but how his thinking can be applied to real world situations, right?
Ah,
From analyzing like contemporary conflicts to understanding the motivations of all these different actors on the global stage.
exactly. Like if you're facing a UPSC question about, say, the changing dynamics in the Indo-Pacific or the role of non-state actors in global conflicts, well, a Machiavellian perspective can really elevate your analysis.
Yeah, it's like having this extra lens to view those events through. It helps you see all the strategic calculations, the power plays, and the potential consequences that you might miss if you're just using a more traditional approach.
So it's not just about, name dropping Machiavelli in your answers. It's about demonstrating that you have a deep understanding of his concepts and how they can be applied to make sense of this crazy complex world of international relations.
Precisely. And remember, the UPSC examiners, they're looking for candidates who can think critically, analyze information, and present well-reasoned arguments.
So by demonstrating a solid grasp of Machiavellian principles, you're not just showing off your knowledge, you're showcasing those analytical skills and your ability to connect, theory with practice.
Exactly. And that's what sets successful UPSC candidates apart.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's give our listeners one final piece of advice. What's the key takeaway you want them to remember from this deep dive into Machiavelli?
I'd say the most important thing to remember is that Machiavelli's work, it's not about providing easy answers or endorsing, ruthless tactics. It's about challenging us to think deeply about power and leadership and the ethical dilemmas that inevitably come up in the pursuit of national interests.
It's about looking at the world with a critical eye,
Yeah.
questioning assumptions and understanding that sometimes the most effective solutions might not always be the most morally straightforward.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's a truth that applies not just to diplomats and policymakers, but to all of us as we navigate the complexities of our own lives and the challenges of a rapidly changing world.
Well said. This has been a truly enlightening deep dive into the world of Machiavelli. I hope you found it as insightful as I did. And if you did, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave us a like.
And don't forget to share your thoughts and insights in the comments below. We always love hearing from you.
Until next time, keep exploring, keep questioning, and keep those intellectual gears turning.